Hello, Barbara.
Hello, Margie. Here
Nice
we
to,
are again.
nice to finally meet you. Hey, thanks so much for helping Cheryl out in her training. And these appointments are just so key for her training program with us. So we're not looking to recruit you. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're just hoping to impress you so that you'd feel comfortable enough sharing any referrals that you might have to Cheryl as she's trying to grow her business and her agency with us. Had you ever heard of World Financial Group or Transamerica before? Does that sound familiar?
I've heard of Transamerica.
Oh, okay, good, good. So, yeah, Transamerica, merged with World Financial Groups several years back, and so now we're together. They're really our broker dealer. But our goal is to help build and protect wealth for families. We believe in creating relationships based on trust and building business through personal referrals. So I would really ask you as I go through the presentation to really look at this presentation through two sets of eyes. One, who do you know that, as we're trying to build Cheryl's agency, she's going to be responsible for hiring and training people. So you might know people that are looking maybe to do something additional, maybe looking to earn some additional money, or number two, maybe trying to find a new career. Maybe they're worried with all those COVID concerns that their job isn't going to be there when they go back to their position. All of those would be great referrals for her from that perspective. Or you might know people that are just trying to get their finances in order, trying to get better rates of return than the bank, or maybe they're trying to get out of credit card debt or IRS debt, or just get their insurances in order. So if you know anybody like that, maybe jot those names down. Those are would be great referrals for her as well. Or this information might even be able to help you and your family. If you look over on the right-hand side, that brown area, it just really talks more about our philosophy and our process. It's a respectful, no pressure process. On that first visit, we sit down with our families, just find out what your goals are, your dreams are, what is it that you're trying to achieve, gather some information from you, go through the concepts that we think it's important for all of our families to know, and make a follow-up appointment to review that financial information with you. We do a financial needs analysis, which really looks at 6 different areas of your financial life, and we'll go over those in a minute. And come back to you not only with that written financial plan, but what are some recommendations to get you to that next level in your financial life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. And then this page talks about all the different companies that we work with. So I don't know, do any of these look familiar to you?
Yeah, Packed Life.
Pack Life. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, they've got the beautiful whales ballooning out of the ocean in their commercials, and Boya has the orange squirrels running around on TV trying to save money for retirement. And you could probably sing the nationwide jingle if I made you, couldn't you, Barbara?
Not a chance. No.
Not happening.
Not happening.
All right. Well, you know what, Barbara? This is just a half a dozen of over 77 different companies that Cheryl has at her fingertips. And then each of these companies has a half a dozen products or services. That's the right-hand side that you see. So that means she's going to have this huge tool belt to be able to help her families in a lot of different ways. So typically we're the fastest growing broker dealer. I think we're the third largest broker dealer. We're the number one broker dealer for women like 5 years in a row. So what that means is we have a lot of leverage over these big companies, which means that Cheryl's going to be able to reduce the cost of anything these families might be spending money on, or maybe increase the rate of return, certainly reducing risk or volatility, and helping them from a tax perspective, really all at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does.
Oh, okay, good. And then I think if you look at most people, friends, family, people that you care about, we just see that there's too many people living with too much debt and not enough insurances, or maybe having little to no savings, or just not a clear understanding of how much money is enough. How much do they need to save for retirement or to send their kids to college. Do you know people with those kind of concerns?
Of course.
Well, those would be great referrals for Cheryl as she goes through the training program with us. Or maybe you know people that just aren't making enough money or aren't sure how to fix the problem. And we know what the result of living like that is, just little to no peace of mind, stress, frustration, negative impacts on families. And we teach people true financial independence, which it's, you know, it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple stuff. You know, concepts that you've probably known about for a long time, like saving more and spending less or living within one means. It sounds good, but it's hard to do. It's hard to put into practice. And so I think having a coach, having a financial mentor like Cheryl, like myself, that can help wade through those waters with you and help put things in vehicles in place to really help you saving and investing. And also maybe just little things like protecting loved ones in case, God forbid, that worst case scenario would happen. We have all different kinds of life insurances that we help people with, systematically reducing and eliminating debt. Cheryl's going to be able to help people get out of credit card debt and IRS debt. Do you know people that are in those kind of situations?
Actually, I can't say for sure.
Okay, all right. And then, you know, making sure that people have sufficient funds to cover expenses for 6 months to a year. We've got some great emergency fund vehicles that will get people better rates of return than what they would if they were saving at the bank. And some vehicles for that long-term savings that protect you and your family, where you can get great rates of return and not lose money as the market goes down. And I think all of those, once you have all those different tools in place, it just leads to an overall peace of mind, right? And isn't that what we're really all striving for, is I know I'm in a good place, right?
Right.
So yeah, really helping to relieve some of those stresses for our families. And then we also do that by teaching people some basic savings and investment principles. Have you ever heard of the Rule of 72? Does that sound familiar?
No, I've never heard of it. What is it?
No? Okay. Well, also Rule of 72 says this. You take the number 72 and you divide it by the interest rate that you're earning. That will tell you how long it will take for your money to double. So in this case, if you're getting an 8% rate of return, 72 divided by 8, that's 9, right? So every 9 years, your money is doubling. So Barbara, do you remember when you were 29 years old?
Yes, I was getting ready to get married.
Awesome. That's so exciting, right? So let's say when you were 29, you had a rich auntie that gave you $10,000 to start your 30s off the right way. And let's say you found a really nice bank back then that was going to give you an 8% rate of return. So using the rule of 72, 72 divided by that 8% interest would mean that money's doubling every 9 years. So now 9 years later, so you start it when you're 29, 9 years later when you're 38, that means you get your first double. Now you've got 20,000 sitting in that account, right? Now another 9 years rolls around, now you're 47. So if you look on the chart there, that means now you got another double, 40,000. Now another 9 years, now you're 56, you get another double. Now you've got 80,000. And in another 9 years, when you turn 65, you're going to have a whole 160,000, right? So the question is, Barbara, do you think that'd be enough for you to be able to retire on?
No.
Yeah, probably not, right? Here's the other question. Do you think you're getting 8% rates of return on your savings, on your investments now?
Yeah, it's about 1.5.
Okay. Well, would you like to know where you could get those kind of rates of return?
I'd love to know that, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, those are just some of the ways that Cheryl's going to be able to help those families, right? The next concept I wanted to go over with you is something that we call the power of time, because time can be your greatest ally or your worst enemy. And if you haven't started saving, you definitely want to get started. And this, I think, is a great example. It's two different people that are saving $2,500 a year until they reach age 65. They're both saving in a tax-deferred kind of a vehicle. So like that 401k that you have at your job, that's a great example of that. And they're both getting a 10% rate of return. So person A, he's the smart guy, right? He starts right at age 30. He puts in 2,500 every single year for the next 35 years. So that means he's put in 87,500 of his own hard-earned dollars, right? And through that magic of compounding interest that we just saw in the rule of 72, that 87,000 blossomed to over 677,000. Well, person B, that's, we call him Bubba, right? He just waited 5 years. And so that shaving off that 5 years, that means he put in a little bit less. He only put in 75,000 into the investment. And through the magic of compounding interest, that blossomed into a little over 411,000. So here's the math that most people never do, Barbara. What did that 5 years cost Bubba? Well, sure enough, he put in 12,500 less than person A, but that means he ended up with $266,000 less than person A. I don't know about you, but there's a lot I could do with 266,000, right?
Right.
So the moral of that story is don't wait, right? Even if it's just a little bit, 50, 100 bucks a month, doesn't matter. Just get in the gym and start pumping those weights. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. The last concept I'll walk you through is really about taxes. It's called the 3 tax boxes. Have you ever heard that before?
Um, I may have heard of them. I'm just not sure how they work.
Okay. All right. Well, good. We'll walk you through it. There's a whole universe of places for you to save and invest, but when it comes to taxation, there's really only 3 different kinds of vehicles, right? So the first is what we call tax me always kind of vehicles. So a good example of that is like savings accounts, CDs, and how you fund those is with post-tax dollars, right? So after, as an employee, you get taxed, right? So the money that's left over, you deposit into those kind of accounts. As the money is growing, you're not paying taxes, and or I'm sorry, you are paying taxes along the way because the bank sends you something called a 1099, which tells you how much tax you now get to pay on that little bit of interest, right?
Right.
So the hard part there is in all phases, you're being taxed. So the pros to those kind of vehicles are that, yeah, you have access to your money, but you're getting taxed on the front end, you're getting taxed again on the back end, and you have low interest rates all at the same time. So there's a high cost to that liquidity, right?
Right.
So thank goodness there's a second kind of vehicle, and these are called tax deferred vehicles. So like that 401k plan that you have at your job, that's a great example of a tax deferred kind of a vehicle. And if you notice those 2 boxes in the beginning, those are grayed out. So that means you're not paying taxes when you deposit that money into those kinds of the accounts. As the money grows in those kind of accounts, you're also not paying taxes. But what do you suppose happens when you go to pull that money out in retirement, Barbara?
It looks like you get taxed.
Exactly. So right when it turns purple, that's when it becomes taxable, right? So that's also the biggest time. Now when you've got all that interest and compounding interest and the principal that you put in, right when you're at the height of your savings and investing, that's when they're going to get you. So the question becomes, do you think taxes are going up in the future, or do you think they're going down, Barbara?
They always go up.
Right? It feels that way, right?
Right.
So you could be setting yourself up for a big tax implication if you're not planning on touching that money right away, right? So that brings us to, and there's just, so the pros of that are that you do get tax deferral in the beginning, but the cons are you don't have control over your own money. And there's all, just like any government sponsored programs, there's rules and regulations. There's contribution limits, there's income limits. So you just got to know how to play by the rules. The second box, or the third box, is called tax advantage. Have you ever heard of a Roth IRA? Does that sound familiar?
I've heard about it. Again, I'm not sure how it works.
Okay, good. So we'll definitely go through that, how these types of vehicles, and the cash accumulation, life insurance falls in here, the kids 529 plans, those are all great examples of tax advantage vehicles. So how this works is you pay taxes on the smallest box, right? You're paying your taxes up front, when you know what your tax bracket is. And then as the money grows in these kind of vehicles, you're not paying taxes. And the biggest difference between bucket 2 and bucket 3 is that when you go to pull the money out in those tax advantage vehicles, you're not paying taxes. So the overall advantage of that is that you're typically paying less in taxes and when you go to pull that money out. And let me ask you, Barbara, if you take a look at all those 3 different kinds of boxes, where would you say the majority of your money is being saved? In bucket 1, bucket 2, or bucket 3?
Right now, it's bucket 1.
Bucket 1?
Yes.
Bucket 1, okay. And where would you like it to be?
Bucket 3 for sure.
Oh, okay, good, good. Well, good. Maybe we could take a look at one of those for you if it makes sense. And so I think the real moral of the story is a financial needs analysis would probably make sense. I just personally believe that everybody deserves to have that written financial plan. And the first part of that is to go through the cash flow, what's really coming in and where's it all going. And I think that's such an important part of what we do, Barbara, because it really gets people thinking differently about how and where they spend their money. Debt management, that's not a big issue for most of the families that we sit down with, but we have companies that will get them out twice as fast as if they try and do it on their own. Emergency funds, we help people put money away for a good 6 to a year's worth of savings in case, God forbid, another COVID comes around. They lose their job, they have a health issue. We've got places where they can save money, where they get better rates of return than what they would at the bank. And just taking a look at proper protection. Hold on. I think most people are just confused by how much life insurance they should have, what's the right kind for me. Do I need long-term care? That's a really hot topic right now. Or disability insurances, if you know anybody that's like a lawyer, or doctor, independent contractor, and helping people build wealth, getting better rates of return like we were talking about at the Rule of 72. And hey, where can I be getting 8, 10, 12% rates of return on my money? And then preserving that wealth with some kind of trust or will or an estate in place. So have you guys ever had a financial plan done, Barbara?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. So probably makes sense to schedule something. I mean, it takes about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how many questions that you guys might have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, well, good. We'll get something scheduled with you and help you guys get started on that path, and which certainly helps Cheryl with her training as well. But I just kind of wanted to touch base on our expansion because there's 3 big segments in our economy right now. There's the baby boomers, anybody born between 1946 and 1964, the Gen Xers, and the millennials. And they all of those 3 generations have big concerns about money, right? The baby boomers are trying to figure out if, how, and when they're going to be able to retire. The Gen Xers don't even know if Social Security is going to be around. None of us seem to have pensions these days. The millennials are trying to figure out how they're going to be able to get a career where they can pay off all the school debt they just racked up. And at the same time, there's just not enough of us to get out there and help them. They say that in the next 5 to 10 years, over 35% of all financial advisors are going to be retiring or leaving the industry. That's going to leave a hole of about 200,000 agents. And so I think it's very comparable to the IT industry back in the 1980s when all the big companies, all the computer companies, Apple and Microsoft were just exploding in growth, and there just wasn't enough people coming out of the engineering schools to be able to fill all the need the industry had. So what the IT industry decided to do is create some in-house training programs. So they were pulling people from different industries, different backgrounds. You didn't have to have an IT background in order to be able to go work for those companies. And we've been able to do the exact same thing here at World Financial Group. You don't have to have a background into financial services. We know that if we find people with the right heart, the willingness to learn, the drive to do something bigger and better for their families, they can be very successful here in our environment. So do you know anybody? I mean, we've just found that, typically people from a military background or a coaching background tend to do really well with us. Do you know anybody with a background like that?
I don't know anyone in the military, and the kids
No.
are playing, are too old to play soccer, so I don't have any coaches anymore.
Do you know any tax people, Barbara?
I do know a lady who runs her own business.
Oh, okay, that would be a great referral for Cheryl, because those people tend to do really well in our environment. And so why don't we do this? I'll have you fill out this card for Cheryl. It really kind of helps keeps track of her training, and then that way you can note down on there. Could you see yourself doing this kind of work? Could you see yourself doing something part-time?
Part-time.
Part-time?
Just part-time, yeah.
Okay, good. So maybe put, note a date on there. Actually, probably what would be a best next step for you if you're interested in the opportunity is coming to one of our corporate overviews. Those are via Zoom. And we have one Tuesdays. Is during the week better for you or on the weekends?
During the week.
During the week. Okay, good. So we have a corporate overview Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6. Would either one of those times work for you?
Not the best time. It's kind of dinner time, but I can give up one day for that.
Okay, yeah, I promise it's only like 45 minutes at the most. They move through the information pretty quickly. And at the end of it, we can talk and see if it's going to make sense on your part or on ours. The next part of the card talks about the financial planning process. So I'd love to just schedule some time with you when we can get back together and go over the financial needs analysis for you. So that might take a little bit longer, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Is during the week better for you or on the weekends to do that?
Still during the week. I like to play on the weekends.
Gotcha. Okay. So could you do like maybe Wednesday or Friday for the financial plan?
Yeah, either day. Probably Friday would be fine.
Okay, let's pencil that in, like Friday at 7. Could you do that?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, good. Awesome. And then also, if I could have you think about some people that you think might be a good fit as Cheryl goes through our management training program, who might be good people that might be looking for an opportunity or earn some additional money, or also people that you know and care about that you think might benefit from the financial planning services as well. Okay?
Yeah, give me a couple of days to put a list together.
Good. All right. Well, fair enough. Myself and my assistant will follow up with you in regards to Tuesday, get you a Zoom link sent over, and my assistant will follow up with you and make sure you have everything, and we'll chat after that meeting. Okay?
Okay, sounds great. Nice meeting you.
All right. Thanks so much, Barbara.